Ambition is one of the driving forces behind success in the workplace, but sometimes ambition can take unexpected forms. Elena, an exceptionally beautiful and talented employee, had worked at the company for years, making a name for herself in the industry. Yet, despite her brilliance and hard work, she couldn't escape the feeling that her beauty often overshadowed her abilities in the eyes of her colleagues and bosses. Despite being seen as a head-turner, Elena knew that she had more to offer than just her looks. She was driven, capable, and highly intelligent, yet she was still stuck in a mid-tier role. She had always believed that beauty was a double-edged sword. While it opened doors, it also left her feeling as though people were focused more on her appearance than her talent. She knew that to rise to the top, she would have to play the game differently. As she looked around at the company's senior leadership, Elena realized something. The CEO, David, was the key. He had built the company from the ground up, and his vision had made it the powerhouse it was today. If anyone could see her potential beyond her physical beauty, it was David. And so, Elena formulated a plan, a bold one, that would test the very limits of her ambition. From the moment Elena joined the company, she noticed the dynamics of how beauty worked in the corporate world. It wasn't just about being attractive, it was about how others perceived your attractiveness. Men and women alike would often compliment her, offer to help her with projects, and praise her for her charm. At first, she thought it was harmless, but over time, Elena realized that these compliments often came with strings attached. People respected her for her looks, not necessarily her skills or intellect. This realization gnawed at her. She had worked hard to get where she was. She wasn't just another attractive face in the crowd. She was a problem solver, a go-getter, and someone who thrived on challenges. But it was clear that her external beauty was what most people focused on. That was when Elena decided to turn her biggest asset into her most powerful tool. She would use her looks to get ahead, not by exploiting her appearance directly, but by gaining access to opportunities and creating the impression of being indispensable. Elena's approach wasn't about seduction or manipulation in the traditional sense. She knew that subtlety was key. She decided that her best chance to advance was to make herself irreplaceable to David. The more time she spent working closely with him, the more he would see her value. And she knew that David, despite his charm and leadership qualities, was often too focused on the company's success to notice the subtle dynamics around him. He was busy, surrounded by colleagues who were too eager to climb the ladder themselves to notice Elena's quiet brilliance. At first, Elena's interactions with David were professional and reserved. She made sure to always be available when he needed assistance, whether it was preparing reports, handling crises, or organizing important meetings. She made herself indispensable by offering solutions to problems before they even arose. But as the days turned into weeks, Elena began to notice a shift. She caught David's eye more frequently, especially when they were in meetings together. His tone softened when speaking to her, and his requests became more frequent. He began to rely on her for guidance on some of the company's most critical decisions, and that was exactly what she wanted. She continued to work relentlessly, making sure she was always around to offer suggestions, to pitch ideas, or to just quietly support him when others couldn't be bothered. Little by little, she was positioning herself as David's right-hand woman, the one person he could always rely on when the stakes were high. As the months passed, Elena's strategy was working. She had gained David's trust, and their professional relationship had grown increasingly close. But Elena also began to feel a different kind of tension. Was she using David as a means to an end? Was her ambition clouding her judgment? And more importantly, was David beginning to feel something more than just professional respect for her? There were moments when Elena could feel the shift. He would linger a little longer after meetings, talking to her about more personal things, his life outside of work, his dreams, his struggle. He would compliment her on her insights, even remarking that he could always count on her to tell him like it is. Elena was no fool. She knew that David, though reserved and focused, was beginning to see her differently. But was he seeing her for her skills and intellect, or was it her beauty that was beginning to influence his perception? This was the point where Elena had to tread carefully. She knew she was walking a fine line. If she crossed it, she could be seen as exploiting her beauty for personal gain, and that could cost her everything she had worked for. But the longer she spent in David's presence, the more she realized how much she admired him, not just as a CEO, but as a man. He was charismatic, powerful, and driven, yet vulnerable in ways that most people didn't see. Elena found herself questioning her own motivation. Was this ambition about power, or was it something deeper? The turning point came one evening after a major project pitch that had gone exceptionally well. The company had secured secured a large partnership and everyone was celebrating. David, clearly pleased with the success, invited Elena to join him for a private drink to celebrate. They sat at a quiet bar, far from the company's watchful eyes. The conversation started off light, talking about the project, about the company's future, but as the evening wore on, it took a more personal turn. David, relaxed and a little tipsy, looked at Elena with an intensity she hadn't seen before. "Elena, I've noticed something about you, something more than your work ethic and your brilliance. You have this way of making people feel like they matter, like you're always there when they need you. But there's also something else." Elena's heart raced. Was he going to admit that he had seen through her plan? Had he figured out that she'd been playing a careful game of using her charm and her proximity to him to advance her career? For a moment, Elena felt exposed, but she didn't say anything. She simply waited for him to continue. David leaned closer and, with a soft but intense gaze, said, "What I'm wondering is, why? Why are you really here? What do you want from me, Elena?" In that moment, Elena was faced with the truth. She had manipulated the situation, but now she couldn't hide behind the facade any longer. She had to decide whether to come clean or continue with the game. Elena took a deep breath. For the first time, she saw David not just as her boss, but as a human being. She had used him and he knew it, but instead of anger, there was understanding in his eyes. The moment felt like a test, not just of her ambition, but of her integrity. "David, I've been using you to get ahead, but it's not just about power. It's about proving that I can succeed on my own merits. I want to rise in this company, but I don't want it to be because I'm beautiful. I want it to be because I'm good at what I do." David smiled softly, a knowing look in his eyes. "I know, Elena, and that's why you'll succeed. You don't need to use anyone to get ahead. I've always seen your potential, and I'll make sure the company sees it too." Elena learned an invaluable lesson that night. She had played the game with her beauty, but what David had shown her was that true success comes from within. From that moment on, she focused on proving her worth with her talent and skills, no longer relying on the facade she had built. She rose through the ranks on her own merit, and David became not just a mentor, but someone who respected her for who she truly was, more than just her appearance. Elena realized that beauty is temporary, but talent and integrity are timeless. In the fast-paced world of corporate life, the desire to climb the ladder quickly can often push people to make choices they later regret. Elena's ambition had led her to play the game in a way that was calculated, using her beauty and charm to manipulate situations and gain an edge in her career. But as the stakes grew higher and she got closer to the CEO, David, Elena found herself at a crossroads, realizing that her carefully crafted plan was starting to unravel. Elena's story wasn't just about ambition, it was also about the dangers of relying on manipulation and playing games in the workplace. In her quest for power and recognition, she had ignored a critical lesson. True success isn't achieved through games, but through authenticity, integrity, and hard work. This is the story of how Elena's manipulative tactics came back to haunt her and how she had to confront the consequences of her action. Elena had always been able to read people well. She knew how to use her beauty and charisma to her advantage, subtly influencing those around her without them even realizing it. In the beginning, she didn't see her actions as manipulative. She believed she was simply playing the game the way everyone else did. In a world where power was the ultimate prize, Elena had learned to use her charm to open doors, position herself strategically, and climb the corporate ladder. But as she got closer to David, the CEO, Elena's tactics began to change. She no longer just wanted to be recognized for her skills. She wanted to be indispensable, to become someone David couldn't do without. She began to manipulate situations, offering her help on projects not just because she was good at them, but because she knew it would give her more face time with David. She made herself available at all hours, always offering her expertise and advice. But beneath it all, Elena was playing a game that involved making David rely on her. As the weeks went by, Elena's influence over David grew. He started to confide in her, ask for her opinion on major business decisions, and trust her judgment. Elena saw this as validation of her efforts. She had become indispensable. But what she failed to realize was that as she got closer to David, the line between professional respect and personal attraction was beginning to blur. And when that happens, playing the game can become dangerous. As Elena's influence over David deepened, so did the emotional cost of her actions. She found herself torn between her professional ambitions and her growing feelings for him. At first, it was all about advancing her career, nothing more. But the longer she spent time with David, the more she realized that she was developing feelings for him. This emotional conflict added a layer of complexity to her plan. She had set out to manipulate him for career advancement, but now she was facing a dilemma. Was she doing this for her career, or was she doing this because she genuinely wanted a relationship with David? As her tactics became more obvious, Elena began to feel guilty. She had started this game as a way to get ahead, but it was starting to feel more like a manipulation of her own emotions. The stress and confusion weighed heavily on her. She could feel herself losing control. No matter how much she tried to distance herself from the emotional side of things, her feelings were growing stronger. She was no longer just a woman playing a game in the workplace. She was a person caught between her ambitions and her desires. This emotional toll would soon begin to unravel everything she had worked for. The tipping point came one evening when Elena and David had just completed a major presentation to secure a new deal for the company. The meeting had gone exceptionally well, and the team was celebrating. David invited Elena to join him for a drink, as they often did after important business milestones. It was during this celebration that Elena's manipulative game came crashing down. David, no longer the distant CEO, but someone who had shared personal moments with Elena, looked at her with a different expression. He seemed tired, but not from the work. They were both exhausted, but from the emotional complexity of their relationship. "Elena, I need to ask you something," David said, his tone more serious than usual. "I've been thinking about the way we've been working together, and I feel like there's something you're not telling me." Elena's heart raced. She had been so careful not to let her feelings for David interfere with her work, but now it seemed like he could sense the tension. She had spent months building a professional relationship with him, and now it seemed as though her plan was being exposed. Elena didn't know how to respond. How could she admit that everything had been part of a larger game? David continued, "I want to believe that you're here because you value this company and the work we're doing, but I also sense there's something more, something you're not being completely honest about. I need to know if your actions are driven by your ambition or something else." At that moment, Elena realized that playing games in the workplace had cost her not just her professional integrity, but her emotional well-being as well. She had been so focused on the end goal that she had lost sight of the values she once held dear. Elena, feeling exposed, knew she had to come clean. "David, I've been using you, not just for your mentorship, but to get ahead in the company. I've been manipulating situations, using my charm to make myself indispensable. I thought it was the only way to climb the corporate ladder. I didn't want to be seen as just another beautiful employee. I wanted to prove I was more than that." David listened quietly, processing her words. For a long moment, Elena felt a wave of shame wash over her. She had played the game, and now the consequences were clear. She had sacrificed her authenticity for personal gain. David sighed and finally spoke. "I understand your ambition, Elena, but the games you're playing are dangerous, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Success isn't about manipulation. It's about integrity. You've lost that, and now you need to find it again." Elena felt a deep sense of regret. Her ambition had blinded her to the truth. Success could never be built on lies and manipulation. She had wanted to rise to the top, but in the process she had lost herself. From that moment on, Elena decided to change her approach. She began focusing on building real relationships based on respect and authenticity. She worked harder than ever to prove her worth, not just to David, but to herself. No longer would she play games to advance her career. Instead, she would let her talents and hard work speak for themselves. David, while still mentoring her, encouraged Elena to develop her leadership qualities based on her merit. It wasn't easy for Elena to regain her standing after everything that had happened, but slowly she began to rebuild her reputation as someone who could be trusted. Playing games in the workplace may seem like an effective way to get ahead, but as Elena learned the hard way, the emotional and professional cost of manipulation can be far greater than any potential reward. True success isn't about relying on charm, appearances, or manipulation. It's about integrity, authenticity, and the ability to build meaningful connections with others. Elena's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of using others to climb the corporate ladder and the importance of staying true to yourself. The workplace is a complex environment, but success, when achieved honestly, is far more satisfying than any game could ever be. Elena's journey had been one of manipulation, self-discovery, and regret. After months of carefully crafting a relationship with the CEO, David, using her charm and beauty to advance her career, she was faced with the harsh reality that the game she played had cost her much more than she had bargained for. Her ambitions had blinded her to what truly mattered, integrity and respect. But now, Elena found herself at a crossroads. Her past actions had left her feeling lost, but they also provided an opportunity for growth. The recognition she had sought through manipulation wasn't fulfilling. Elena realized that the only way to truly lead and earn respect was through skills, authenticity, and integrity. In this pivotal moment of self-awareness, Elena understood that leadership wasn't about charm or appearances. True leadership came from within, through hard work, dedication, and the ability to inspire others by leading by example. This is the story of how Elena learned that respect and success are earned through authenticity, and how her new path toward leadership helped her rediscover herself as both a professional and a person. Elena sat in her office late one evening, reflecting on everything that had transpired. The consequences of her manipulative actions weighed heavily on her. She had worked so hard to make herself indispensable to David, but now all she could see were the cracks in her approach. She had tried to manipulate situations, using her beauty and charm to secure her place at the top, and while it had worked temporarily, it had also stripped her of the respect she so desperately needed. Her conversation with David earlier was a wake-up call. His words were still fresh in her mind. "You don't need to use anyone to get ahead. You have the skills and talent to make it on your own." Those words resonated deeply with Elena. She realized that her journey to success had been built on a false foundation, and that the only way to move forward was to start from scratch, this time with integrity. The weight of the situation hit her hard, but it was also liberating. Elena knew she couldn't undo the past, but she could change the future. If she wanted to earn respect, not just from David, but from her colleagues and herself, she had to lead with authenticity, skill, and integrity. In the weeks following her conversation with David, Elena began to take a hard look at her career and her values. She started reading leadership books, attending seminars, and seeking advice from mentors. As she dove deeper into the concept of true leadership, she realized that the qualities that made someone a respected leader were not tied to personal gain or manipulation. Instead, true leadership was about serving others, leading by example, and building trust through competence and integrity. One of the most profound lessons Elena learned was that leadership wasn't about seeking the spotlight or manipulating situations for personal advancement. It was about empowering others and fostering an environment of mutual respect. Leadership meant showing up every day, working hard, and inspiring others to do the same. It was about being willing to take responsibility for both successes and failures and never compromising your values. As she absorbed these lessons, Elena began to shift her focus from personal gain to collective success. She realized that the best leaders were the ones who didn't need to play games. They inspired others by the strength of their actions, decisions, and authenticity. With a renewed sense of purpose, Elena started to reframe her approach to her work and her relationships at the company. As Elena's mindset began to change, the company faced a new challenge, a major project that could potentially make or break their reputation in the industry. This project was a high-stakes, high-visibility opportunity, and the pressure was immense. Elena, who had once relied on manipulation and charm to win David's favor, now saw this as an opportunity to prove herself through hard work and skill. For the first time in her career, Elena didn't seek to make herself the center of attention. Instead, she worked quietly, providing insights and solutions, contributing without expecting anything in return. She no longer played the game to earn approval. Instead, she focused on adding value to the project and supporting her colleagues. As the project progressed, Elena's integrity became evident to everyone around her. Her teammates, who had once viewed her as a manipulator, began to see her in a new light. They noticed how hard she worked, how she didn't seek credit for her ideas, and how she took responsibility for her role without seeking praise. Elena was no longer just a beautiful face in the office. She was someone who could be counted on for her skill and her character. The turning point came during a critical meeting with the client. The project had hit a significant roadblock, and the team was struggling to find a solution. David, who had always been quick to make decisions in the past, turned to Elena. Instead of relying on her looks or charm, he asked for her expert opinion on how to move forward. Elena took a deep breath and spoke confidently. "I think we need to approach this issue from a different angle. We've been focusing too much on what hasn't worked instead of what can still be done. I suggest we make some small changes that will allow us to pivot without losing momentum." David listened carefully and then nodded, impressed by her insight. It wasn't the first time Elena had offered solutions, but this time her approach was different. She wasn't trying to win him over. She was simply focused on solving the problem. And in that moment, David saw Elena for who she truly was, a skilled, competent professional professional with the integrity to lead, not just follow. As the project came to a successful conclusion, Elena realized that she had earned something far more valuable than any promotion or recognition. She had earned respect, the respect of her colleagues, the respect of her boss, and, most importantly, her own self-respect. David, seeing Elena's growth and transformation, offered her a leadership role in a new initiative within the company. It was a position that she had once dreamed of, but now Elena didn't see it as the end goal. Instead, it was the beginning of her journey as a true leader, a leader who had earned her place through hard work, dedication, and integrity. Elena's story was no longer about climbing the corporate ladder through manipulation. It was about leading with authenticity, hard work, and a commitment to excellence. She had learned the hardest lesson of all, that true leadership doesn't come from what you can take, but from what you can give. In the end, Elena's journey to leadership taught her that success isn't about playing games. It's about playing fair, being true to yourself, and earning the respect of others through your actions and values. True leadership is built on integrity, and respect is the most valuable asset a leader can have. True leadership is built on integrity, and respect is the most valuable asset a leader can have.